What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports here at the Voice of College Football. We're going to preview the 2023 schedule for the LSU Tigers. Here is the schedule from 2022, and if you had told me that LSU was going to lose to Florida State in New Orleans and then go on to win 10 games, I would have told you were crazy. I just really thought that they needed to win that game to get off to a good start and have a good season, but they were able to bounce back from that. They beat Mississippi State in a game where they kind of pulled away late. They had a scare against Auburn on the road, but then they lost to Tennessee and got blown out. And at that point, you're kind of wondering, how good is this LSU team? Because Auburn wasn't very good, and they really were fortunate to win that game. But they kind of picked up some momentum. They won a shootout against Florida, Ole Miss, and then the big game against Alabama. Were able to win a sloppy game on the road at Arkansas, beat UAB, and then they lose to Texas A&M late. So it was really an up and down year. Obviously, a huge accomplishment for Brian Kelly in year one to win the SEC West, but it could, there were definitely some rough spots in there as well. So let's look ahead now to 2023 and see what the schedule looks like. We'll start with the games that are not in the division. So the non-division games, of course, they're going to play every team in the SEC West. They'll play Florida State again. This time it'll be in Florida, in Orlando, neutral site game. Obviously a lot closer to Florida State, but I think that the fans will be fairly evenly split, maybe like a 60-40 deal, because LSU fans travel really well. So that's the game again to open up the season. It'll be a Sunday night game. Then they'll have Grambling State. They'll have Army, a tough team to prepare for with that triple option. I don't know why anyone would schedule them, honestly. They'll play Georgia State as well. And when I say anyone, I mean like a Power 5 team. And then they'll have Missouri and Florida out of the SEC East. So not a bad draw at all. Missouri on the road, that'll be a challenge. Of course, every game in the SEC on the road is tough. But you don't have to play Georgia. Don't have to play Tennessee. Even maybe South Carolina is the third best team in that division. Maybe Kentucky. Florida, they're losing a lot, so I don't know how good they're going to be. They'll play them every year, of course, but Missouri is that other team that they'll get, and so I think that's a nice draw for LSU this season. And let's look now at the full schedule. So they'll open up with Florida State, like I said, in Orlando. That'll be a Sunday night game again. Huge game, and I think really that if LSU is going, and let's say both teams, I think the winner of this game is going to be a very real playoff contender. The loser's not out of it, but the winner of this game is going to be right there in the thick of things. I think both teams could be preseason top 10. And the loser of that game, it's going to be tough because I don't think you can afford another loss. Now, if you're LSU, maybe you could lose somewhere. As long as you win the division, they could be in that same situation they were in last year. But if they can win that game, that's going to give them an opportunity to where, let's say they lose to Alabama, playing them on the road, revenge game, that's obviously going to be a tough one. If they win the rest of their games, they could get in the playoff at 11-1. So that is just a huge game right there to open up the season. After that, they'll play Grambling State on September the 9th. Then it's a road game at Mississippi State, and then Arkansas on September 23rd. So they play Arkansas much earlier than normal. That's, of course, it used to always be the final game of the season, but it's still been a game that's been played late. They'll play them in September this year, and then they'll play Ole Miss on September 30th. So if you can beat Florida State, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Ole Miss, those games will be challenges. Every game in the SEC is tough, but those are games that LSU can win. They'll be favored probably in all three of those games. And so if they beat Florida State, you could see them going into the month of October 5-0 and probably ranked pretty high. After that, they'll play Missouri. That'll be the first game of the month of October 7th, on the road at Missouri. Then they'll play Auburn after that on October 14th. This is an Auburn team that we don't really know what we're going to get from them this year with Hugh Freeze. Playing at home, though, you really like LSU's chances there. Just such a tough place to play. I know Tennessee went in there and beat them last year, but for the most part, LSU does not lose at home, especially when they're good, and they're going to be good. Army will be next after that on October the 21st. Yeah, you have Army. You have to prepare for the triple option before playing Alabama. That's a challenge. The good news, though, is there's a bye week. So there's a bye week between Army and Alabama. Now, that will be much needed because you spend all week working on the triple option. Then you have to get ready for Alabama. really bodes well for them that they'll have 2 weeks, and they always do. It seems like Alabama and LSU always have a bye week before they play. Same thing with Florida, Georgia, most years. So they'll have Alabama on the road, then Florida. They normally play Florida earlier in the year, so Florida and Arkansas have kind of flipped around here. Then Georgia State after that on November 18th. That'll be a home game for LSU. And then they'll close it out with another home game against Texas A&M, and that'll be a revenge game for them. That'll be a tough game, though. I think Texas A&M is going to be much improved, and those games have been pretty good. We've had some surprises, some really close games. That's turned into quite the rivalry there, if you want to call it a rivalry there with LSU and Texas A&M. So, again, when you look at the schedule, big picture, only back-to-back road games are Ole Miss and Missouri. I talked about the Army-Alabama thing. The bye week will be big there. Florida and Arkansas kind of flipping around. Just kind of my takeaways from the schedule here. But overall, it's a schedule that gives LSU a good shot to be a playoff contender if they can beat Florida State. Like I said, you can lose to Alabama. Let's say Alabama goes on to win the West. Lose to Alabama, but they'll be favored maybe in every other game that they play. And so if you win those games, you take care of business, you could see this team maybe at 11-1. But it all starts with Florida State. That's going to be the game that I think will determine if LSU is a playoff contender or just a really good team again. That's going to be a big one. I know they lost last year and still were able to get into position, but I think winning that game will make it much, much easier. So, yeah, 2023 schedule for LSU. Not horrible, but that big non-conference game to kick things off against Florida State, that'll be a big test.